Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 4th Annual Laura and Richard Kretschmer Service Award Gala. Our venue has changed a bit this year. Our excitement and passion for the work that we do has not, nor has our gratitude for each of you and the support you provide in so many ways to Hearing, Speech, and Deaf Center. I know you've heard me and most likely every other staff member say this before. During this difficult year, your support matters more than ever. Calling 2020 difficult seems like an understatement. We spent the spring scrambling, the summer stressing, and now head into the fall wondering what could possibly come next. We're living through a dual pandemic of sorts. COVID-19 keeps us apart and some of us afraid. Record unemployment and loss of income shines a bright light on inequities in our society. COVID-19 touched the HSDC family just last month. Erica, one of our employees, lost her father to COVID-19. Her dad, Eric, lived in Tennessee, and unfortunately, due to the hospital restrictions, she was not able to be there when he passed. We share Erica's pain and offer our deepest sympathies. We're also in the midst of the latest chapter in a struggle that's gone on much too long, the fight for racial justice. HSDC stands with all members of our community in rejecting racism and discrimination in any form. We're committed to working together to build understanding of the dignity and beauty of every human being. This is why we strive for an inclusive world where communication is accessible to all, not just speech and hearing, but listening as well. Your support as donors, volunteers, and staff members makes this possible. Many of you have already contributed through support of this event. Thank you. If not, please go to hearingspeechdeaf.org and click on the blue donate button on the right near the middle of your screen. Anyone who donates $50 or more will receive one of our window masks that help improve communication. Tonight, we will share some of our mission moments where we have made a difference in the lives of people we have served. We'll also honor some of our friends whose gifts of service span many years at Hearing, Speech, and Deaf Center. First, we will honor Brian Keating, who was the Vice President of Human Resources at Cincinnati Bell and is now retired. He is also a former board member, supporter, and friend of HSDC starting in 1998. Next, we will honor Kevin Murray, who is the current Senior Vice President and Chief Information Officer at Cincinnati Bell. Kevin joined the board of HSDC in 2010, just as Brian was exiting. We will also recognize Cincinnati Bell and President and CEO Lee Fox. Cincinnati Bell, connecting what matters. What a perfect description of the great work they do. They have been our partner in removing obstacles to communication for more than 25 years. We will have some special surprise guests later in our presentation who will pay tribute to Drs. Laura and Richard Kretschmer. And finally, we will recognize our rising star, David Tripathy. David has made extraordinary accomplishments in his speech therapy program. We'll hear more about David's accomplishments and Brian and Kevin's outstanding volunteer service. But let's start by taking a look at some of the amazing work that Cincinnati Bell does throughout the greater Cincinnati community.
We have over 1,000 people gathered across our footprint. We're doing work in the city where we're headquartered. I couldn't be more proud of the work we do in the community. As of this month, I think year to date, we're pushing up to 10,000 hours of community service through our employees into the communities where we live. So please give yourselves a round of applause for that. That is phenomenal. this also marks the end of our United Way campaign. You guys not only met the $1 million mark, you exceeded the $1 million mark. So congratulations on that. That is such a wonderful outcome.
John Sinclair joined the Board of Directors in 2017. From the time that John joined the board, we knew that he would be a strong asset to Hearing, Speech, and Deaf Center. John is retired from Humana, where he served as a regional vice president and brings a wealth of experience and knowledge to HSDC. A proven leader, John graciously accepted the role of board chair in July of this year. John will tell you more about his experience and commitment to HSDC.
Growing up, I knew that my hearing was not good. Ear infections as a baby led to severe loss in my left ear, but the right was functionally okay. Beginning in first grade, every year my mother would trot into the teacher's office and insist that I needed to sit in the front row due to my poor hearing. And every year I was mortified and harassed by my friends for being a teacher's pet. My hearing treatment consisted only of sitting closer, listening harder, and reading more. Really a pretty good recipe for getting good grades. And later, in my teenage years, I spent hours blasting Van Halen and Earth, Wind & Fire over my massive JBL speakers and Sony Walkman. The louder, the better, all to the detriment of my long-term hearing. It wasn't until college where I met my future wife, Carmen, and started to realize the gaps I faced in everyday communication as she served as my translator among our friends. And when I turned 30 and realized I was getting old and my vision was going, I took the steps to get glasses. Still, I never thought my hearing was so bad that I might need hearing aids, and my vanity and lack of awareness about the benefits of them kept me from considering them. However, when my daughter started playing flute, and I could barely hear the notes she was playing, much less her soft, beautiful voice, I knew I'd benefit from the hearing aids. My shock on the first day of getting them was walking out in my backyard and hearing the birds for the first time, and they are noisy. A little known fact: men are twice as likely as women to report some trouble hearing. A primary reason Carmen and I have been married 36 years is my hearing aids that let us watch TV together without cranking the sound to room-rattling levels. And I can now hear her ask me what I'd like for dinner and not think she's asked what I might do this winter. Some people will contend that my hearing loss was a disability. I prefer to see the positive aspects and the benefit of growing up paying attention a little more to what others have to say. In my career as a consultant, this developed a skill for listening for the client needs and understanding the patterns in the problems they faced. And now that I've been involved with Hearing, Speech, and Deaf Center, I've come to appreciate the wide range of challenges and perspectives of those with hearing and speech difficulties. I see the profound skills and adaptations people who are deaf, hard of hearing, and or have speech deficits make every day to these challenges. And HSDC is the only nonprofit organization in the area focused on helping people across the full range of communication disorders, including interpreting, speech, and hearing support. I've personally seen the technical expertise of our audiologists in synchronizing my aids with my phone and other Bluetooth devices. Our clinicians provide state-of-the-art services for everyone, including those who have insurance or pay privately for their hearing aids, and for those who do not have the ability to pay. It's a wonderful world when we can communicate with one another. And now, as our society needs improved communication more than ever, we need your help in educating our community on the wonderful services our organization provides. With your support, we can make Greater Cincinnati the most accessible place for the hearing and speech challenged people of our community. Please support the Hearing, Speech, and Deaf Center by going to hearingspeechdeaf.org and clicking on the blue Donate button on the right near the middle of your screen. Thank you for joining us, and please enjoy the rest of the 4th Annual Richard and Laura Kretschmer Service Award Gala. And now, let's hear from a great friend of Hearing, Speech, and Deaf Center, Greg Flannery. You may recall Greg's name from his years working as a journalist at the Enquirer. Let's listen to Greg's story from an address he made at a United Way event.
I've got these little beauties in my ear that I'm very always showing off. As a reporter and editor for 35 years, I sometimes used to address college students, church organizations. For the last 11 years in my career, I always had to begin by saying, I've got very poor hearing. If I'm not speaking loudly enough, please let me know because I won't be able to tell. I don't have to say that today. I get very emotional when I talk about the Hearing, Speech, and Deaf Center. In 2004, I started losing my hearing. I went to a series of doctors who were unable to diagnose what the problem was, but they all said, hearing aids won't do you any good even if you can afford them. In January this year, I saw another doctor. He also said, I cannot restore your hearing. He said, go to the Hearing, Speech, and Deaf Center. Maybe hearing aids will work. That's where I met Ann Rolford. Now, her title is clinical audiologist, but when I think of her, the word hero comes to mind. She decided hearing aids would in fact help, and she got them for me through the Medicaid program. Now, since then, I've heard birds singing. I sit in the backyard sometimes and listen to the wind in the tree. It's just the most amazing sound. It's more about just enjoyment of life. I learned long ago that repeatedly look before crossing the street because I couldn't hear cars coming. About 5 years ago, I looked and looked as I was crossing the street. I didn't hear this car speeding towards me. A man grabbed me, pulled me onto the sidewalk. He potentially saved my life. Another way to look at it is hearing loss can be potentially deadly. I can't convey to you how much my life has improved since I got these hearing aids. I can only tell you how grateful I am to Ann Rolford, to the Hearing, Speech, and Deaf Center, to United Way for supporting the center, and to you for supporting United Way. Thank you.
As many of you are aware, our Community Services for the Deaf program provides advocacy, social events, and community employment services for the deaf. Tonight, we will hear from Alta and Matthew Miller regarding their experience with HSDC.
Hi, my name is Matt Miller. I would like to talk a little bit about my experience with Elizabeth Whelpdale at the Hearing, Speech, and Deaf Center. I try to communicate with her about various companies where I apply for employment as a semi-truck driver. I try to communicate with people and negotiate with them about how to remove communication obstacles for deaf people while they are driving a truck or while working on the job, or how we deaf people can communicate effectively. At times, when I apply at various companies, some jobs specify that I must provide a special medical waiver because I am deaf. Some jobs require the employee be able to hear and speak unless they provide a medical waiver proving they can actually do the job and can communicate. So I have to negotiate with these companies about what documentation they need. Now, when I encounter restrictions, Elizabeth helps me to communicate effectively, provides feedback, writes letters back and forth, so I can satisfy all the company's requirements. It's great having someone mediate between us. I think it's wonderful to have someone at Community Services for the Deaf to help me communicate effectively without involving outside people at these various companies where I apply to work.
Hi, I'm Alta. I'm going to talk about community services for the deaf. Within the hearing community, you have law enforcement, lawyers, hospitals, schools, and various other establishments. At Hearing, Speech, and Deaf Center, where Elizabeth Whelpdale works, She is an integral part of educating these establishments about sign language interpreters. For example, I've been at the hospital and was provided an interpreter that was not a good match for me. My husband and I agreed that we wanted to place a complaint due to the interpreter not being adequate. We went to Community Services for the Deaf to see Elizabeth Whelpdale, and she was able to intervene and educate the hospital about interpreting services for client language match for total communication. This ensures that the deaf patient and the doctor are able to understand each other completely. Now, with law enforcement, there's another area where education is important. Deaf behavior can look different because we can't hear. It's important for them to provide an interpreter so they are able to document both accounts of the incident, no matter if those involved are hearing or deaf. This is the best way that the police officer and the person who is deaf can understand each other. Elizabeth's role at Hearing, Speech, and Deaf Center is the educator. She's done a lot of work with these establishments in the hearing community, but more work needs to be done to improve communication. When there are no misunderstandings between hearing and deaf people, there will be total communication.
Our first honoree this evening is Brian Keating. Brian credits the Cincinnati Bell leadership team with setting a great example for charitable giving and providing leadership in the community. He served on the Hearing, Speech, and Deaf Center board for 12 years, serving 2 terms as board president. Other areas where Brian has made a difference includes volunteering for the Alzheimer's Association, serving as the board president for the American Red Cross, and serving on the board of the Centel Federal Credit Union. Brian recalls one particular very rewarding volunteer experience, serving for 8 years as a tutor at Taft High School. Brian had great examples of giving back from his parents, who were very active and supported charitable work in their community. So Brian, on behalf of Doctors Laura and Richard Kretschmer, the Board of Directors, and the staff of Hearing, Speech, and Deaf Center, we present you with this 2020 Volunteer Service Award.
Well, thank you very much. Well, thank you very much, JB. This is really quite an honor. Well, good evening, everybody. It is my distinct pleasure to be part of this celebration, which honors the many community contributions made over the years by the men and women of Cincinnati Bell, and in particular, those contributions which impacted the Hearing, Speech, and Deaf Center. I would like to extend my personal thanks to John Sinclair and the full board of directors of the center for this recognition. I would also like to thank J.B. Booth and all of the current staff of the center for all they do daily to remove obstacles to communication in our region. You know, their work is really so important to strengthening the fabric of community, which makes Cincinnati such a great place to live, work, and play. And like the efforts of many of my former colleagues at Cincinnati Bell, the staff's contributions here are not celebrated enough. It was my honor to have worked for Cincinnati Bell for 39 years, and during that tenure, I was fortunate to have worked with many wonderful colleagues who taught me much, and to have had the opportunity to lead various aspects of the business. And as those opportunities grew, it was made very clear to me that with that opportunity to lead came an expectation of community engagement and tangible participation and contribution. I've been retired for 7 years now, but it's very gratifying to me that under the leadership of Lee Fox and his executive team, that sense of community purpose and engagement at the company has really only grown. So Lee and his team are to be commended for that. As I reflect on my experience working with the center, you know, 2 real vivid memories come to mind. First, I recall how very much I enjoyed my interactions with the staff, and as a board member, helping them make such a difference in people's lives in the community. And secondly, how much I learned from the other board members as we discussed and wrestled with the many challenges presented. I enjoyed the experience very much, and I am grateful for those opportunities. Thank you for indulging me this evening, and thank you for recognizing Cincinnati Bell. And most of all, thank you for your ongoing support of this great organization as it continues empowering communication in Greater Cincinnati.
Our next honoree this evening is Kevin Murray. From a young age, Kevin has given back to his community. He remembers playing checkers with older adults at a local nursing home and volunteering at food banks. As an adult, Kevin coaches youth sports, serves as a volunteer on projects through Cincinnati Bell, and serves on the Corporate Advisory Council of the Cincinnati chapter of the BDPA promoting diversity in information technology. Kevin has served on the Hearing, Speech, and Deaf Center board for the past 10 years and is a member of the Finance Committee. He's a generous supporter of our mission. Like Brian, Kevin thanks his parents for always teaching him to be thankful for what he has and to help those who are less fortunate. So Kevin, on behalf of Drs. and Laura Richard Kretschmer, the Board of Directors, and the staff of Hearing, Speech, and Deaf Center, we present you with this 2020 Volunteer Service Award.
Thank you, JB. First, I want to thank JB Booth and the Board of Directors of the Hearing, Speech, and Deaf Center for this recognition. I've been on the Board of Directors for about 10 years, succeeding Brian Keating as a member from the Cincinnati Bell leadership team. When I was first approached by their board recruitment process, I was very impressed with how they focused on serving the underserved, particularly with children, helping thousands each year. It was personal for me too. When I was very young, probably 5 or 6 years old, I had a pretty significant issue with slurring my speech. I was made fun of, and frankly, I didn't understand why. When I went to kindergarten, the school had me work with a speech therapist. She worked with me every week, and we were able to correct it. It was only years later that I really understood and appreciated how important that was. I had access to that kind of help. Not everyone does. The Hearing, Speech, and Deaf Center is dedicated to making these kinds of services available to everyone. Shortly after I joined the board, I can vividly recall talking to a friend of mine who is an ear, nose, and throat doctor. When I mentioned the center, he stopped me and said, quote unquote, "That place changes lives." And I can vouch for that now, 10 years in. One of my favorite things we do is hear from a clinician at the start of each board meeting on how we've impacted someone's life for the better. We call these mission moments, and they are truly special and remind us why we do what we do at the center. Cincinnati Bell and the Hearing, Speech, and Deaf Center are two established pillars in our community. I look forward to keeping the relationship between us going strong, continuing to help change lives by empowering communication in Greater Cincinnati. Thank you.
In addition to Brian and Kevin, we are honoring Cincinnati Bell this evening. Under the direction of President and CEO Lee Fox, all Cincinnati Bell employees receive 40 hours of paid volunteer time each year to volunteer with local nonprofit organizations. They champion the mantra, "Give where you live." The leadership at Cincinnati Bell has set the standard for giving back, and Brian, Kevin, and Lee are excellent examples of what it means to support the communities where they live. Cincinnati Bell has been a great partner of Hearing, Speech, and Deaf Center in removing obstacles to communication throughout the Greater Cincinnati community. So Lee, on behalf of Drs. Laura and Richard Kretschmer, the Board of Directors, and the staff of Hearing, Speech, and Deaf Center, we present Cincinnati Bell with this 2020 Volunteer Service Award.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. My name is Lee Fox,
and I am the President and CEO of Cincinnati Bell. I am so appreciative of the recognition you are giving Cincinnati Bell, Kevin Murray, and Brian Keating today. Cincinnati Bell has been partnering with the Hearing, Speech, and Deaf Center for more than 25 years. On behalf of Cincinnati Bell's 4,400 employees, thank you for this recognition. We are proud to support you. As I reflected on what I wanted to say today, I thought about the common goals that our organizations share. I wanted to briefly touch on 3 of these goals. First, the Hearing, Speech, and Deaf Center and Cincinnati Bell are both dedicated to empowering communications. In our financial statements, we often note that Cincinnati Bell has spent over $1 billion to build out a fiber network in the region. We could just as easily say we've spent $1 billion to empower communications efforts, because that's what our fiber network does. It supports the technology that allows us to stay connected, particularly during a challenging time like the one we face today. Second, both of our organizations are dedicated to removing obstacles that keep individuals from reaching their full potential. Access to education is a powerful example of this shared commitment. Too many students in our region don't have reliable internet access at home. This is not acceptable, particularly as schools adopt remote learning strategies. That's why Cincinnati Bell and a number of partners recently announced the Connect Our Students program, which provides internet connectivity to students who lack reliable access. Lastly, the Hearing, Speech, and Deaf Center is on the front lines of removing obstacles for the students it supports. I'm incredibly impressed with the services you provide, which allow these students to bring their full selves to school and engage in the learning process. As the leader of Cincinnati Bell, I'm also incredibly passionate about removing obstacles that allow us to build an open, transparent, and inclusive environment where our employees can bring their full selves to work. Thank you again for letting me speak to you today, and thanks for everything you do in the community.
This evening, we would like to express our deepest gratitude to the sponsors and namesakes of tonight's gala, Drs. Laura and Richard Kretschmer. And we have some very special longtime friends, volunteers, and supporters of HSDC who will pay tribute to Laura and Richard. Introducing Betsy and David Mann and their daughter, Debbie.
Some years ago, we learned that our dear daughter Debbie, and she's not that old, at the age of 6 months had a severe hearing loss. A shock for a family. And the second thing we had to deal with was, how do you do the things you need to do to be a good parent and support someone who has been diagnosed with a severe hearing loss? Thanks to Dr. Richard Kretschmer and the support of Dr. Laura Kretschmer, Betsy and I, quickly found ourselves in a family support group where we learned exactly what the challenges were we faced. With great empathy from Dr. Kretschmer, we understood the path that we should follow, and it was by and large a positive path. And as I have said many times over the years, Dr. Kretschmer saved our lives as a family in terms of understanding the disability that our dear daughter had at that time, and allowed us to do everything we could to help her be the fine social worker she is today, and one of the most empathetic, humorous young ladies that I'm aware of. Dr. Kretschmer's, Laura and Richard, have come to be tremendous supporters of the Hearing, Speech, and Deaf Center in so many ways, and we all are so grateful for that. So we're very pleased to be here and say one more time, thank you. It has been a priceless gift to the Hearing, Speech, and Deaf Center.
Oh, I couldn't have said it better myself. That was really good. But I am going to say a big thank you. Thank you for influencing this little family's life so much. Really, that first meeting that we went to, the family support group, was kind of a period, I was kind of in a period that was very bleak, with no hope wondering what in the world life was going to be about for our baby. And during that meeting, Dr. Kretschmer, you just hit it on the nail and sparked my determination to be as helpful as to Debbie as I could be. And you know, it's funny, you and Laura, not only did we meet at that family meeting, but you know, you've been in our lives ever since. I think about when we were trying to decide where Debbie should go to college. Remember? We had dinner in our dining room and we talked about what colleges, because we didn't have an idea. Where would be the best place for her to go, having a hearing impairment? And by George, you just hit it on the nail, just like I said, and said Lenore Rhine would be the best place for her. And we went there, and because of you, she did beautifully at Lenore Rhine, and which prepared her for her working experiences. And I just have to say from the bottom of my heart to both of you, thank you. You've meant everything to us. Thank you so much.
I need to say thank you as well, because if it hadn't been for them, for Dr. Kretschmer, I don't think I would be anywhere close to where I am today. And, you know, my parent made it look easy, but I know from stories they've told over the years how much the Kretschmer and the Hearing, Speech, and Deaf Center have helped them and been a support to all of us. And so I want to say thank you again, and you'll always be a part of my life and the reason for where I am today. Thank you.
Our final honoree this evening is Rising Star recipient David Tripathy. Megan Walsh, speech language pathologist, will present David with his award.
As a speech-language pathologist, I have the privilege of meeting all kinds of hardworking and interesting people. When considering who to nominate for the Rising Star Award this year, one particular person came to mind, David Tripathy. When I met David just over 2 years ago, he was working for Kroger and was becoming frustrated with his difficulties communicating and being misunderstood by others. With the support of his family, David took responsibility and control of his communication challenges and sought intervention at Hearing, Speech, and Deaf Center. Once we began working together, I soon learned that David is a 3-time medal winner in various swimming events at the Special Olympics. I knew right away that he would do whatever it takes to reach his goals. David has a unique work ethic and drive for improvement that he has applied to both swimming and speech therapy. During our time together, I have been humbled to see firsthand his dedication and perseverance through challenges. He has worked diligently to overcome obstacles to communication and has since been able to achieve a personal dream of authorship. With his family's help, David has written, illustrated, and now published the tale of his Olympic achievements. If that wasn't impressive enough, he is selflessly donating all proceeds from his book to the Special Olympics. I can't think of anyone more deserving of this honor. I present to you this year's Rising Star Award winner, David Tripathy.
Thank you, Megan.
You're welcome.
Thank you for this award. It is a great honor to be able to share my story of my greatest achievement with all of you. In 2018, I represented Ohio at the Special Olympics USA Games in Seattle, Washington. When I was there, I became a 3-time medal winner. I won bronze in the 100-meter freestyle, silver in the 4x25 free relay, and gold in the 50-meter butterfly. The best part was having my family cheer me on from the stands. I wrote a book to share my story called My Road to Olympic Glory, to inspire young people to set goals that they can do anything they set their mind to.
This evening, you have seen videos and heard people speak of how Hearing, Speech, and Deaf Center has impacted and changed their lives. We all know that effective communication is a core requirement to being able to achieve our dreams. This next mission moment speaks to the heart of every parent who wants nothing more than for their child to have a fulfilling and successful life, and to hear those 3 words.
Even though we were together, there was a void between us. Living under the same roof, going to the same places together, but he could never speak to me. And tell me the 3 words that every parent wants to hear. And so I watched him and I observed him, writing down everything that I saw, all the interactions. And I knew at that point, he needed more help than what I was able to give. But then I heard of the Hearing, Speech, and Deaf Center of Greater Cincinnati. It was there that hope spoke to me. Everyone was so dedicated to helping him. It was like they were slowly lifting this veil from over him. And then one day, I heard him say those 3 words.
I love you, Mommy. I really do. I love you, Mommy.
Say it again.
I love you, Mommy.
Say it again.
I love you, Mommy.
I love you too.
If you would like to support the work that we do to help children like La Marie overcome speech and language deficits, please go to hearingspeechdeaf.org to donate now. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our first and hopefully our last virtual gala. Thank you to our sponsors, Curtis Visual Communications under the direction of Curtis Sellers, who made this virtual event possible. Steve Wesselkamper, our Director of Development and Marketing, and thanks to all of you for your support. As I mentioned at the start of our program, during this difficult year, your support matters more than ever. Thank you again for joining us this evening, and mark your calendars for the 5th Annual Laura and Richard Kretschmer Service Award Gala on May 13th, 2021. Thank you and good night.